From Content 360, this is the state of client acquisition. Welcome back to Season 2 of the State of Client Acquisition podcast. This is your host, Michael Bohannes. I'm very excited to be kicking off this new season after my summer break, where I was exploring a few different avenues in terms of marketing, in terms of strategy. So very excited to see what's coming down the pike in the last quarter of this year. And in the meantime, I have a couple of really great guests coming on the podcast for you. And we're going to mix up the formats. There will be some Q&A formats. There will be guests. There will be some short and long thoughts of me. I'm just not going to be constrained by the format anymore as I used to before. And I hope that whatever the format, that you will get plenty of value out of it. So let's get into this first episode of Season 2, which is with someone who I esteem very much, very highly. His name is Evan Thomsen. He's a consultant in the United States, and he has pioneered a really new and different work model. So I always think of consultants as having two different avenues to scale and to really make a lot of money, and that is, first of all, via productizing, which is the route that I'm taking. Then the other one is hyper-specialization, where you become so valuable and so technically skilled that you can command truly superior rates. And of course, you can also become famous and command higher rates in that way. Well, Evan is pioneering a third way, and that is, I call it weaving yourself into the fabric of the company, that you become sort of the right-hand man or woman of the CEO, and then can ask for profit share, revenue share, or maybe even equity. And that is a truly fascinating model that Evan has pioneered and has also codified in his book, Don't Chase Your Dream Job, Build It, which is a highly recommendable read, a short one on top of that as well. So without further ado, let me introduce Evan Thomsen and our sprawling conversation that covers the likes of Machiavelli and his impact on business, how to build a sustainable career that also is going to make you happy, and what is the ultimate wisdom of the movie Moana. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, Evan Thomsen. It's been a while in the making, but now we're finally here. Thank you for being on the first episode of the second season of the State of the Client Acquisition podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, so Season 2 then. Okay, so I've been wondering. Okay, so there's Unsafe Spaces. It's formerly a former podcast.
Oh,
and then we have the State of Client Acquisition.
Yeah, it's still the same name. I'll keep it at that.
All right, fair enough.
Although there's
coming. Well, you know what? I was looking at this. I was just like, wait a minute. When did we get connected? It was in June.
Yeah. So now it's August, and we connected in June. And I actually went and looked at the email that I sent you. It was one of my standard cold email. You responded to a cold email.
Yeah, I did.
Saying that you seem like somebody worth knowing. And I was really intrigued by that, because I sometimes, when I get a positive response, it's about, yep, sure, let's talk. But you seem like somebody worth knowing. So do you remember what sparked your interest, where you realized what a connection we will end up having?
Let me just confirm this for a second here, because I got it. Oh yeah, I did say that verbatim. Yeah, wow. No, because so what's actually interesting is I was looking at this, and I remember the first email you sent me, or actually maybe it was the second email. The first email I can't find because I just delete it immediately, because that's what you do, right? When you get an email from someone you don't know. Mm-hmm. But the second email was just like a bunch of advice in there, and which is obviously bold and somewhat presumptive to just send an email to someone and give them advice. And so you sent me an email giving me advice about LinkedIn and marketing and stuff like that. But I read it and I'm like, yeah, that's obviously correct. And so I ended up taking all of your advice actually immediately, like within 5 minutes. I instantly took action. But I didn't respond to that email. I just took your advice. And then you emailed me again. Honestly, like this email, I can't really remember. Yeah, nothing here was good, but it was just like, okay, you've worn me down.
Okay.
Or at least I should have responded to the last one effectively in my mind. Yeah. But you were bizarrely emailing the wrong email. I don't know how you got this email address of me.
Good old scraping, my friend.
Yeah, clearly. But
Oh, yeah, good. So just for background, so we connected over cold email, and then we simply started talking and we realized that there is in many ways a certain kind of, how to say, similarity of spirit and similarity of thoughts. And I believe that one of the things that got us talking beyond the possibility of you becoming a client, which was the initial conversation, what got us talking was one time when I posted my watch post and I used a Kipling poem. And I
yeah,
then realized that you were very much into literature and poetry and all of that, that you very much take on the wisdom of the greats. And that's when we started talking in this different way. So just as a
yeah,
great example of
yeah.
how even something that is a box standard conversation that is meant to turn into a client relationship can actually result in something completely different.
Well, and because if I remember right exactly, you were paraphrasing Kipling, but you weren't super closely paraphrasing Kipling. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were paraphrasing Kipling in a way where the only way you would know that it was Kipling was if you really, really had his work memorized.
exactly.
And so I saw that and I just instantly, obviously,
Yeah.
I think I just quoted it verbatim.
Mm.
And so that was obviously my way of saying I know what words, I know what you read, even though you're not really giving away what you read. I know what you read. Yeah, no, it was
That
an interesting moment. Yeah.
And that was similar to when I caught you being using the Mark Anthony in one of your articles, when
Yes.
you were using you were using a way a figure of speech of Mark Anthony from Julius Caesar from Shakespeare. So
I,
yeah, I
I
just
think
think
I was being less subtle though, in all
yeah, that's
fairness.
true. That's true.
But
Okay, good. Basically, we're two intellectual snobs who just realize it need to be each other. So
yeah,
that's where
yeah.
we are. Cool.
Yeah, no, that's the connection. Because, like, again, our first conversation, our first 15-minute conversation, I was in Mexico walking around outside because we had a couch surfer staying with us who was teaching a yoga class, so I couldn't be inside. Great moment, right? Um, and so we just spoke for 15 minutes. Yeah, there wasn't really too much there in our conversation. It was just pretty much clarifying like what you offer was not something that I really needed.
Mm,
Um, but it was a good conversation. But yeah, everything developed post that,
exactly.
really.
Exactly.
So
So, Evan, so you're a sought after, highly paid business consultant, and we'll talk many of the things that you do in the course of our conversation. But I would like to start with a very specific tidbit in your biography. So I looked at your bio on your book, and it says Evan works with companies around the world and helps entrepreneurs start, scale, and sustain their businesses. He's a former athlete, strength trainer, shoe salesman, airborne infantryman, singer, choir director, fundraiser, and humanitarian. Now, I'm particularly interested in the shoe salesman part. Can you tell us more about that?
yeah, when I was 19, yeah, about 19, while I was also a strength trainer, I worked two jobs when I was initially going to college. When I initially went to college when I was 19, I was a terrible student. I didn't really care. Absolutely failed student, lazy, terrible, whatever. Anyway, but I worked two jobs, and I worked at a Shields All Sports, kind of like a sporting goods store. Everything from like running shoes to kayaks to guns. But I worked in the shoe section, selling like hiking boots, dress shoes, stuff like that. And yeah, I did that for almost a year, and I was just a part-time salesperson. But I was the number one part-time shoe salesman like every single month, because what I specialized in was getting people to buy a more expensive shoe than they initially came in for. So most people were trying to buy hiking boots, right? That was the main thing that we were selling there. So they would get types of hiking boots, and I did hiking. I traveled. I'd done hiking a bit, so like I knew what I was talking about. And somebody would come in looking for like a $50 Merrill hiking boot, and I'd usually get them into like $150, $200 solo boot or something like that.
Mm,
Um, Talking them through the benefits there. So yeah, no, that was my one little experience within sales, obviously. But
awesome.
there's a lot. The one thing that I sold, actually, that I would sell more MBT shoes than anyone in the company. Do you know what MBT shoes
No,
are?
no.
They're the ugliest shoe in the world. in fairness, they're made for health purposes, really. They have like this big cushy roll bar on the bottom of the shoe. Yeah, you can look them up.
Yeah.
Mike Bravo Tango
Oh.
MBT shoes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they look like gigantic clods that are curved
yeah.
at the bottom. Oh, you're
Okay.
sharing your screen? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're well. These are, I would say, these are slightly more fashionable than they were over a decade ago.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, again, big clunky shoes, gigantic roll bar in the bottom. They look a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I would sell the dress version of those. Like dress shoes, black shoes, brown shoes that had those. Anyway, those things cost $300 to $400.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, crazy, right?
Mhm.
I would move those things. I could sell people on the MBT shoes. It was a hard sale, but I had the best secret for it. I understood the shoe. I knew what the health benefits were. I knew how to target people that were interested in that. But more than anything else, I owned a pair and I wore them to work every day.
Of course, and that's the way. Like you have to be you have to be eating your own dog food. Have you actually? You had bought them from you with your own money?
Yeah, no, and I wore them to work every single day. And so when I'm talking about the shoe, I'm pointing down at me. Hey, I wear these every single day. This has been helpful for me. And again, at the time, I'm also a strength trainer. I'm an athlete. So it had a health benefit about posture, about back, and stuff. So I could talk about it within a health and within a fitness context. Yeah, I moved those things. When you get paid commission selling $300 shoes, not bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And were you including your strength trainer background in your sales pattern? Were you including?
100%.
Oh,
100%. Yeah, because it adds the credibility and the legitimacy. And obviously, I could speak fluently to it, right? It wasn't just like, oh, I'm a strength trainer. End of conversation. It was, I could speak about concepts within health and fitness and why the shoe can help your back and your posture and yeah.
Awesome.
So,
and
shoe salesman days.
That's brilliant. And another part of your biography is choir director. So I was also part of the Vienna Opera Choir back in the day when I was a student. And so that definitely resonated with me. Can you tell us more how you actually came to do that?
I joined the Army and enlisted in Special Forces training, and I went through Special Forces training for a year and a half. That ended up not working. I was close to finishing the program, but that ended up not working out, principally because there was a massive DoD budget cut in 2011. That was like automatic. It's complicated, but I was the youngest guy in my training battalion, so I just kind of got disappeared, and I got sent to the 82nd Airborne Division. So I was an airborne infantryman for like a month, but there's also an a cappella choir in the 82nd Airborne Division. And my mom actually told me about it, which I thought was a joke. Obviously, that's a joke, right? Why would there be an a cappella choir in the Army? But then I saw them at an event I was at, and I auditioned, and they accepted me. And I was a singer for a few months, but then just within about 4 months, I took over the whole organization as the musical director. And so I spent the majority of my military career as a cappella choir director, and all we would do is travel around the U.S. and perform at shows. And
wow, really? So it was like proper legit. It wasn't just like a fun thing for the.
No, it was my job. My full-time job for over 3 years in the U.S. Army was as a singer, and for 2.5 years of that as a musical director of an a cappella choir, where all we would do is perform like every day. I performed at probably 600-700 shows.
I mean, all I can say is thank you for your service.
Yeah, well, thank you for, you didn't pay my education benefits, I guess. But,
amazing. So what kind of stuff were you singing? The classic a cappella stuff?
Yeah, like a mix. I mean, obviously, so there was, a military element to it, right? So there was like some patriotic songs, some military songs, but the majority of it was just like, oldies, R&B, country, pop, so like there was a big mix. Again, like we had to perform for so many different audiences, right? So everything from an elementary school to Monday Night Football to civilian Medal of Honor ceremonies to foreign general delegations, and everything in between. So we had to have a thing to, for everyone. And at the end of the day, we were the representatives of the 82nd Airborne Division. Yeah. We were like the biggest PR wing for the whole unit, which is one of the most significant units in the U.S. Army. So yeah, it was a fun, really fun job.
Must have been so much fun. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your vocal range? Are you a tenor, baritone?
I was tenor.
Yeah.
I was a tenor. But when I became director, I kind of had to become a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, to be able to work with, all different things. And I'm not the best singer. I got to work with incredible singers though.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was a blast.
Cool. Awesome. Well, but now you're a consultant
Yep.
and a very successful one at that. So the one thing that fascinated me about you when we started talking was this seeming ease with which you just got your clients to pay you significant amounts of money. So a few weeks ago, again, you messaged me, oh, I just got myself a giant raise. And that definitely was like, interesting. How does he do that? So can you tell us, like, what do you do for your clients and how did you get them? And what is the main added value that you give to them?
So how I got my clients, I would say that, and this is where it's honestly unfortunate for the State of Client Acquisition podcast. I don't really have a good answer for this. Honestly, like I suck at it. It's one of the reasons why I know you and why I know other people who know how to like do lead generation and stuff like that. Because I've never been successful at it. But I've gotten clients through luck and referrals, and that's pretty much it. Mainly referrals, a little bit of luck, mainly referrals,
Okay.
and that's it. And um, yeah, really,
So
there's nothing else.
okay, but what do you do for them?
A bit of everything, honestly, is what it ends up being. And my book kind of speaks to it in a way. I wouldn't say that I have a particular thing for any one client. There's variation between clients. I'm doing my best to formalize it to try to keep me in a territory. But at the end of the day, I do everything that I see that's possible to help the company. And I position myself in a way where I'm right connected with the owner, right? 'Cause if you're at this level and you're trying to do things better, you can't, right? You're not empowered to do it. You don't have the authority. But if you're up here, like you do have the power and the authority to be able to like have this wide lens over company activities. And I've gotten fortunate enough to be seated at the right hand of business owners where I can come in and look across the company at every aspect that's happening. And I just like like when you're trying to find like when you lay the foundation for a house and you try to find if it's flat or if there are any cracks, what do? You pour water on it and see where the water goes. That's kind of just what I do with a company.
That's such a great
And
picture.
and and so that means there's a lot of things. Like there's a bit of IT things. There's a bit of data now. Well, there's a lot of data analysis. So that's pretty consistent across everybody. There's reporting. There's advisory to the business owner. There's thinking through strategic problems and planning. There's a lot of process improvement, operations analysis. There's a lot of communications between clients, between partners. There's marketing strategy. There's even down to websites, understanding how we are capturing lifetime customer value. I mean, it's really kind of an endless question. But what I found is like most like small businesses, they hire staff to do specific jobs, but they don't have somebody who's just capable of doing a lot of really helpful shit. And the business owners are all obviously very talented, very capable in so many ways, but they are usually pretty narrow in what they're good at and what they understand. And when any business starts to grow, I mean, we're talking like 1 year. Okay, you got over the 1 year hump. Like you were a good business owner, you did the right thing, you knew the value, you got the right value proposition, you were able to get a team, you were able to generate positive cash flow. Okay, that's all relatively simple. It's hard, right? But it's relatively, there's a small number of variables to control in that period of time. But as soon as you get over that hump, then we're starting to enter into this territory of just unbelievable complexity. And most business owners just simply don't have the capacity to be able to deal with all of that complexity. I do. And so I just look at the array of complex problems that they're facing, everything from ensuring that they're not violating HR law to knowing if this customer segment is generating greater value versus this one, even though different amounts of time, energy, and effort go into these groups and they have different pricing models for each group. Like all of those complex questions, I do that continuously and obsessively and just make things really easy for them and really clear. And then they can't not hire me. And like my role continues to expand, and I'm able to demand a pretty competitive and interesting type of compensation package because of it.
Yeah. Okay. Can we talk about the compensation package, not in terms of specific numbers, but you also
Yeah.
have a very particular way of how you go about asking for compensation. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So I typically am pretty slow about how I ask for compensation. I like to provide pretty overwhelming and almost an annoying level of value before I start trying to talk about money, because most people wouldn't be willing to pay me what I want to be paid in the first week, type of thing. So I'll usually wait for about a month of really like wearing them down. I guess is the best way to describe it.
But wait, during that month, you don't have an agreement on
oh,
how
I almost never have agreements. The only time I've ever signed a contract with somebody is if it's required for them for some legal reason.
So you start working, you like do hours upon hours per week, you work with them without having ever discussed anything about money. So they don't know if like they're accepting your services without ever having discussed money with you.
Well, so it depends. My biggest client right now, like I started as a small engagement with them, and then the water analogy, I filled more things, right? But I was doing that for quite some time before I was able to position myself in a way to be able to feel comfortable, talking about a different compensation plan. And then that has just kind of continued. So I put the cart before the horse, I guess, right? All the time.
And no, but that is such a fascinating model. And I've never heard this before. And this is genuinely now real. I didn't know that from all the conversation we've had, I didn't know that. So, and I think it's a fascinating model for people to follow. If you are willing to work with somebody and provide an annoying, as you call it, an annoying and overwhelming amount of value, and you just work with them, you just get rolling, schedule meetings, do calls, deliver value to them. And after
I would add a detail. I would add a really important detail there. It's if possible, I mean, one part of it is because I'm so confident in the value that I deliver, and the quality that I'm very confident that they've never worked with somebody like me before, and so they don't understand how valuable I am, and so they need a bit of time to get that, and I'm willing to take nothing or way less than I should get for a short period of time, rather than making a deal that's here at the beginning when I know I can make a deal here a month later, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that a lot of it's not simply just to provide value. That's not clear enough. It's to say like, okay, I'm starting to do these things, and now like a month or two later, the way in which your company analytics operates is me. It's me. I made it and do it. Like, what are you going to do? You don't want that? Somebody else is going to do it? No, it's me. Your email system is me. Your website is me. Your CRM is me. Your like, there's just so many elements where it's like, okay, I'm now controlling all of this strategically important parts of your company. Not for negative purposes, not for wicked purposes, but because I've made them better and it's helped your company and I'm the one that did it. So I assume you want me to keep doing that, right? You need these things, right? The company's better with these things, right? So it's of course to the benefit of the company, but I position myself in that way where it's like, wait a minute, these are my assets. So it's not just like I'm giving away value, it's I'm creating value that needs, well, again, most things within a company need continuous involvement. That like, so that's operations, right? So,
but in the preceding month, as you were building this, they never once ask you, Evan, actually, what is your day rate? How are we working here? That doesn't happen.
It sometimes kind of comes up, but like, yeah, it's never really been a problem. Like people will try to. Okay, I have examples. I can speak to examples of this year. 2 examples. One, a client that I have. One, a client that I'm getting. In the process of getting. I'm in this process as we speak. And this first client like wanted to talk about money, and I would refuse to talk about money because I knew I wasn't done with him. I knew he didn't understand what I was going to do yet, and how important I wanted to become to the company and to the business owner. And so I would just say, I'm not worried about that right now. I want to make sure that I can provide these things. I want to make sure that I'm able to make a difference for you in these ways, which is obviously, no one argues with that sentence, right? That easily, that like makes them forget about that. So, yeah, I would keep going through that process, and eventually I would then communicate like, okay, here's how I get paid, and here's why. And you've already seen what I've done for you. That's what I'm going to keep doing and more.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to do that, I need to get paid this way. So I'm incentivized to do those things appropriately, and rewarded for the unique value I'm providing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm putting myself in this position where I'm simultaneously providing more value than anyone they probably ever worked with, but a unique type of value that they can't really get anywhere else. So I find in that process what unique value creation I need that nobody else is providing, which eliminates competition. So they can't go hire you, because I've figured out the secret system that they need during that period of time. So instead of coming to some okay agreement in the early stages, which I could, right? I could come to an okay agreement with virtually anybody within a couple of days, because most businesses are similar. Most business owners need similar things. I can do certain things, like, got it. But I'm willing to take that time and take that risk to be able to find the extremely unique to them personally and to their business specifically. And then I fill those gaps up to and including, even if it's something I don't know how to do, I can learn it.
Yeah. Well, that's a tenet of your book, which I can't wait to get into. But just to close this topic up, so that is such a fascinating model, and I think so many of our listeners can take away something from this. If you work with clients where you can have a real long-term relationship, where you have maximum of you can only probably manage only 4, max 5 clients at a time, right?
Yeah. We'll see what the limits are, but
Yeah. Okay, but you couldn't have 20 clients, right? So this,
definitely.
Yeah. So it's like for a small amount of clients, you have something of a retainer model. Consider doing it in this way, and take a page out of Evan's book here, where you could actually start by delivering overwhelming value in upfront, where you don't discuss money. Even if they ask you, just consider saying, you know what, let's discuss it. We have this little milestone in front of us. Let's just do that. I want to show you what I can do. And then let's discuss money in case you want to talk and continue the conversation. And then your model then includes a certain profit share or equity, or that is kind of part of your model. So you have like a normal day rate, and then some kind of something on top, right? And that's how you manage to get pretty high rates overall.
Yeah. I always want to get to the point where it's a monthly retainer, which is simple to communicate. And then some type of percentage on something, and that's either revenue side or profit side. And I'm not really too picky about it. It's kind of what makes sense. I guess because another thing that I want to do when I'm in this speculative period is I want to go over the financial model of the company, partially for me, but partially because that is actually really important. I need to know, where is this company creating value? How is it scaling? How is its financial health? For me to invest that level of energy into a company over the long term, and kind of, plan for the long term in that way, I need to know for myself that it's going to be a good investment of my time. I also need to know how to wisely advise a business owner. You can't advise someone if you don't know their financial model, period, because that's the company. And essentially, everything else is fluff compared to, just one Excel spreadsheet about your financial model, right? So yeah, I'll figure that out. And then when I see that, I'm really able to put my way in there. Okay, well, how do I make sense within this in a way that's both agreeable but scalable, that makes sense for the company first, for the business owner first, for the company second, and then for me. And when those things are aligned, it's actually not really hard to negotiate when those things are aligned.
Yeah. So, and on that note, you also said you provide unique value that they cannot get anywhere else. it almost seems like you weave yourself into the fabric of the company that you become indispensable.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly it. And that's the perfect analogy, actually. Yeah. I weave my. I've been using these negative terms, like I wear them down and I beat them into submission, and but weave into the fabric is much better. Yeah. And every company's fabric has variations.
You're like a
Every business
benign
owner.
virus that takes over the organism.
I'm a very healthy virus.
Yeah,
I'm that I like.
exactly. A benign virus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fascinating. Okay. So, and you now touched on something that is and so let's now get into your book. You touched on something that is a central aspect of your thesis. So the book is Don't Chase, you see plenty of notes made in it. Don't chase the dream job, build it. The unconventional guide to inventing your career and getting any job you want. And one central tenet of the book is this idea that 95% of all skills you just basically can acquire within a week. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 90% you can acquire within an hour.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah.
and so that is, I mean, to me, and just to give you an idea, in my world, the way I grew up, and I live in Austria now, I grew up in Czech Republic / Austria, and we have a very strong hierarchical culture where it's all about you have to go to school for 4 years before you can even like raise your voice. Like when I studied law in Austria, not once did I hold actually a talk, like a presentation. It was just literally sitting in the classroom, taking it in, and then regurgitating it at the exam time. Sure, you get sometimes called out, you have to say something, but never is there a point where you just present something, for example. So in my world, this is completely preposterous to say that you can actually even add financial economic value to a business with something that you spend 1 hour acquiring and that somebody would actually pay you for that. So that is, to somebody of my background, completely mind-blowing. But I do have a slight objection to that, but let's get to that later. Can you give an example of sorts of how you learn these type of things? Like when you give me an example from one of your clients, they presented you with something that you didn't yet know how to do, and you just worked your way into it.
How was your day today? How was your day today? Did you have any problems in your work today? What were three things that annoyed you?
Today, 3 things that annoyed me.
Yeah, professionally.
For example, the fact that my email scraping method is not particularly time consuming, but it's like 10 to 15 minutes every day and requires a bit of brain power. So I cannot really give it to my VA.
Okay, what do you use for that?
2 tools, one called Phantom Buster, the other one Mailshake, and LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Okay. Well, but that would be an example. So what I would do if I found that out, and this is wasting, 15 minutes of your time, each day, so that would be instantly something that I would look into of, okay, well, what can I learn within that system to improve upon it?
Mm-hmm.
How can that be done differently? Obviously, I don't have the specific example because I don't know those tools, but that would be where I would start to look. Mm-hmm. To give an example that's basically almost that, but with something that I've just done. So the client that I'm currently weaving my virus like into their fabric, they were sending out an email to all of their active clients, and they didn't really have a system for that. And so I created a quick fix for them instantly that they didn't know how to do, that saved them like 2 hours. So just right then and there, I didn't, and when I spoke to him, I'm just saying, okay, well, there's 2 ways to go about this. There's a way where I can set up the system over here, or we can just get it done right now really quickly. He's like, let's just get it done once we're able to system later. Okay, got it. We got it done within 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And now I built out a system where they're automatically scraping their client emails, updating them automatically into a system. And that's being done all behind the scenes. And then an email can be sent out with, obviously with content, create the content, but can be set out in a very expeditious manner every single month without a problem to all of them, without any concern, and so that's just, again, seeing a problem, something that they're trying to achieve. When they did send that out, they got a ton of referrals, their janky email that wasn't done very well, but it still got out, right? I got a ton of referrals, instant value creation. And now I've seen, okay, well, this is profitable. Let's improve upon the system. And now I'm the one managing this technological process, and in part this content creation process that now the business has deemed to be essential, or highly important and very critical to their operation. And that was all something I didn't know how to specifically do. Now, obviously, I know how to pull data generally in an automated fashion. I know how to run an email marketing system generally in an automated fashion. But do you know how to link the correct email marketing system to their specific CRM, which they have to have for financial advisory? No. Okay, so those were all things that I had to learn. I had to learn how to integrate their specific CRM into this specific mailing system, because this is the one that works with their CRM in the most intuitive way, all without adding any extra dollars to their budget. Like, okay, well, wait a minute, that's different. Anybody can come in and say, I can do this. You now have this monthly subscription, you have to do half the work, right? So that was, well, yeah, and that took me probably like 30 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
And it was just, I started with, okay, here are the tools that I have to use. And I read the documentation on what the tools are capable of and how they integrate. And I watched a quick video, and there it's done. And I'm no more technically sophisticated than your average person. I just read the relevant literature and got through it.
So to this, I remember one instance where I was in a similar situation, and I would like to like a gentle pushback to the idea. It makes things more interesting. So it's not like I'm not really pushing back on you, but it's just like a counter example to that. I once was working for a company in my early days when I was doing content marketing. I was basically just a glorified writer for them. And then at some point I also thought they are using HubSpot as a base for their website and their entire email marketing technology, the email marketing platform. And so at some point I was curious in doing also their landing pages and designing all of that so that they can get, more relevant leads. And I asked to do that. And because the CEO was a friend, he's just, yeah, sure, go for it. And so I built one landing page. I did read a little bit about it, like sort of like best practice for landing page design. And then basically he told me it wasn't particularly good. And he just kind of said, dude, just get back to your writing stuff and we'll have somebody else who can do these kind of things. So it was a bit of a blow for me, but I mean, I had not invested more than, let's say, maybe 3-4 hours in figuring out how to do that, both from a technical standpoint, also from best practice in landing page design. And so here's where I was reading this. And as you're telling me these things, I'm a little bit skeptical. Maybe this is like still my Austrian brain kind of self-sabotaging me. That could possibly be. But I'm always thinking, compared with somebody who's like a HubSpot expert, who's doing landing page design as their daily bread, and probably their day rate is comparable to mine, why on earth would this company have me do something that they can get another specialist to do far better than I can, and while paying them the same amount?
Yeah, if it's a big company. So if it's a big company, you can hire a HubSpot expert, and you can hire someone who's an expert at programming language 1, programming language 2, like a different person for all of those. And you're able to afford those types of things. But a small company never has that. A company with, I would say, less than 70, less than 100 employees likely, is not going to be able to afford a domain expert across like all of their systems. That's just not going to happen. And then as companies get even smaller, it becomes even more sparse. And then using something that you learn, like for example, like me integrating these things and getting this emailing system done, that's not like the end of it for me. That's like the start of it though, right? Like I'm not done learning that thing. And one thing that I'm all about specific knowledge and become an expert in as many things as you can. And I believe you can become an expert in quite a few things. But I think one thing about being a great business consultant is, one, you have to be an expert in many things, but two, and probably the most important thing of all, you have to be able to have perspective. Like, so the HubSpot expert is, okay, hey, the company has already determined, we know that we have to use HubSpot and we have to integrate it in this way with this tool. No, we just need someone who can technically do that thing, not think critically about any of our business processes at all, but just answer questions related to HubSpot. Whoa, okay, that's not how businesses are run. That's not how small businesses operate at all. There's not the grand business owner who has full perspective and a wide range of knowledge and expertise to be able to make wise and discerning judgments about the 500 decisions that they have to make a day. No, that's never how it happens. And so I think the key to being a great consultant and a great advisor is that you're across so many things that you're able to actually bring like really valuable strategic perspective on what is a time waste and what is not, on what's valuable and what is not. And then to be able to do those things very efficiently and learn new things very efficiently, continuously. So yeah, but I mean, obviously the thing in the book, I mean, this book is not explicitly for consultants. Like I believe many people can do this within a company, be entrepreneurial, as it were, right? And but yeah, like I'm not competing with, there's definitely somebody out there. Again, this platform is called Advisor Logic. So the CRM is Advisor Logic. It's a CRM for financial advisors in Australia. So, you know, there are people out there that know that platform better than me. But what I've learned in that platform, in a week, is how to integrate it with a few different systems: email marketing, Google Calendar, automatically pulling data from those and spreading them out, giving their team notifications, which they didn't have any of that before. And so when we're talking about skill, I'm not comparing myself in skills to the world of Advisor Logic CRM experts. I'm comparing myself to this company is not making as much money as it could, and it's not as effective as it could be, and it needs this done. It needs this job done, and they don't have somebody doing that job. A skill is the person who can come in and do that job that isn't being done right now and can continuously get better at that skill simultaneously. So if all you do is go out there and compare yourself to someone who has spent 1,000 hours working on one thing, well, okay, got it. They know more than you. But guess what? That person isn't currently working for your client.
Yes.
So grow up and solve the problem. And if you keep doing that and approach life, perhaps not just work, but life in that way, maybe things will start to go really well for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I think as you were talking, I realized this requires a tremendous amount of self-confidence. The fact that you simply don't know something, you don't know how to do one specific task that needs to be done, but you have the confidence that you communicate to the client, hey, it's not going to be a big deal, I'm going to figure it out. Even at the risk that as you delve into the topic, as you realize, geez, this is really complicated. It could be, right? You don't know that upfront because you don't know enough about it upfront. But having that kind of confidence that you can figure it out, I think that makes your value proposition so this idea of figuring these things out as you go, on the one hand, really intriguing, because obviously there's so much value to be generated with this approach. And your success is a great example of that. And that's why the book so resonated with me, because I sense this is exactly the right way to go. Don't chase the dream job, build it. And this, you just illustrated a building block of how you do it. However, while it is intriguing, it is also very daunting at the same time, because it requires a tremendous amount of confidence in your abilities to figure stuff out. And as you say in another part of the book, I hope I quote you correctly, that adaptability is not part of the program. It is the program, or it is the requirement. Like that is because you say one of your chapters is your job will be gone in 5 years. That adaptability needs to be part of, again, weaved into the fabric of your being. And that is a perfect example of that, what you just said. Great. Excellent. So 100%. I've already hinted at so many things. Could you give us an overview of the book? What is your main narrative, and where are you going with this?
Well, I think you guys just said it. Like, your jobs will be gone in 5 years, and adaptability needs to be your core plan within your work.
Sorry, I should have kept that. I should have left that to you.
That's certainly a good part of it as well. I would say maybe another part is I consider that a good thing. I don't know. Like I think that that's a good thing. Yeah, I kind of go through a bit of the history. You know, I think that the old way of thinking about work and about what the dream job is just no longer functional. You know, it's no longer a career path that people can expect to have. And well, it is what it is. Whether you feel good about that or not, tough. You know, that's just kind of a fact. And but the big spirit of the book really is it's just like, listen, the this is almost more of an existential conversation as much as a professional conversation of, well, wait a minute, what is the best life and what is the best work are very similar questions. They're not hugely dissimilar, because work makes up a good part of your life. And but at the same time, like, there needs to be that type of hierarchy. Life is more important than work, and work is a part of your identity. It's not your identity, it's a part of your identity, and so it needs to be properly considered, which means it's important, but it's not the most meaningful thing, and neither is it meaningless. Like, and I see so many people in their careers oscillate between these points of like, I'm going to go all in with my job and it's going to be everything about me, and like the main the first few words at the end of my name are my job title or some shit like that, and I find that to just be absurd. Like, no, please, most important thing in your life should be like your family, or whom you're married to, or your children, or like, dear God, like, get your priorities straight. And your hobbies perhaps even, but and then some people then oscillate into like, oh, this work doesn't matter, it's just a job, it just pays the bills. Like, well, fuck, like, you're doing this probably 8 hours a day, maybe more. Like, let's consider this. Like, how good can it be? And so if you are serious about trying to have a good life, you also have to be serious about having good work. And so then it's okay, well, what is good work and how do we situate it? Well, one, in the modern era, we have to be adaptable, because there are no fixed jobs. There are no dream jobs that will take care of you forever, that are stable, right? So we have to adapt to the instability in the world today. We have to be much more dynamic. We have to be much more global as well. We have to take advantage of communication systems. We have to take advantage of learning opportunities. And we also have to understand that, I mean, again, I'm sure there's all these like people with MBAs in Australia that don't have a job because of me. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just like, so you're competing with people around the world now, whether you like it or not. Even if you don't want to leave your backyard, you're still competing with people around the world, because they might come to you and they might never step foot in your city. So, that's something that you have to adapt to. And then the other part of that is, okay, well, the existential question of, okay, well, what is a good life? What is good work? And I think that needs to be answered far differently than how people have been answering that, because we've been trying to say, oh, I really want to be a this, again, what have you, right? Like, let's think of even cliches, because these happen when you're growing up, right? You're a kid, you're a teenager, maybe you like to argue, oh, you should be a lawyer. You you're really into cars, oh, you should race cars or be a mechanic, or you really like computers, well, you should be a computer scientist or something like that, right? So well, possibly those things are all partially true, right? Like, hey, we're interested in a thing, so maybe we should like drift in that direction. Like, that's a reasonable proposition. But it's also reasonable to say that the specific things that you do in your life, while they're inevitable that they're going to change, so you better not be married to them, because this is going to change dramatically. So you have to be adaptable there, and you have to be very flexible in what you do. It's also to say that we get bored and disinterested so easy, and like, as soon as we're doing this, put anybody doing the same thing for a few years, they're going to just want to scream and be desperate for some type of variation. That's most people, are that they have to fit in some type of change. It's why a lot of people hit like midlife crises. It's why you see these people that have these inspiring LinkedIn stories that, of course, aren't at all contrived, where I had this terrible job for 10 years and then I went out on my own and became a life coach. But it's kind of true though, right? Like, so the everybody invests so much, like, oh, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my 4-year degree and become an expert in finance, and then I'm going to work my whole life in finance and nothing's going to change. Wrong. Not true. That story's not true. Throw it out, get rid of it. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be happy with that. That's not what's going to give you a fulfilling life. And I don't think it's even going to be the thing that makes you the most ideal professional in most business environments.
Yeah. So again, quick pushback on this, because I do, of course, you speak about a world that you inhabit, fair enough, and I also see it. But frankly, my neighbor works in HR in a bank. That job, while she probably is doing more job changes in her career, and she's going from different big company to different big company, probably her job will probably still be around 20 years from now. Maybe not 50, who knows, but
it
20
will.
years.
Do you think HR has not changed dramatically in the past 20 years of what their job requires?
Yes, what the job, the role itself, yes. As in, like, sorry, what is the content of the role, the type of tasks that are being done? Yes, that's for sure. But in terms of the structure of the job, 40-hour work week, they have to come in every day. Now with COVID, have to work more from home, but again, working there, being subordinated to another person, and then kind of reporting to them. That does not change. So I just wonder, is there really, of course, we inhabit a world, you specifically, because I at least sell like a relatively contained type of service package, but you are this weaving yourself into the fabric. You are like at the pinnacle of this kind of new world.
Okay,
But
got it. Okay, I understand
people,
what you're saying. 2 points.
right?
Yeah, well, most people. Okay, well, all right, I'm most people, I think. So, two things. Now, first thing is that yes, there's still going to be management systems within companies 1,000 years from now, I predict. You know, if we look at, for example, the management structure of the U.S. Army and your average corporation, it is uncannily similar to the Roman military. Like, okay, well, I imagine that type of modality, if you read the Cyropedia by Xenophon about Cyrus the Great, the management structure of the Persian military, very similar to the U.S. corporation today. Okay, so that's going to be similar. Yep, 40 hours ish, unless you were in France, and then you get to work. What is it, 34 hours, and then
Something like that, yeah.
And then there's campaigning for 4-day work weeks, 3-day work weeks, which you already have. You can work a part-time job if you want a 4-day work week. But anyway, that's besides the point. Those things I don't anticipate to be functionally different. Yes, there's still going to be. I speak to this in the book. There's still going to be a CFO at Coca-Cola. There's still going to be an HR director at Coca-Cola. There's still going to be an HR director at the bank. Who's your neighbor, right? Like that's still going to be true. But so many of the specific elements of what constitutes like all of those professional roles, like, again, I bet your HR neighbor has had to deal with massive technological change within their bank in the past decade.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, well, these are huge new skills that they've had to adapt to and learn. I bet they've had to deal with an awful lot of changing HR policy that's substantive. I bet that's drifted not just into the legal framework of the company, but how they communicate to everybody about how they hire people, about how they fire people. That has fundamentally changed. I bet there's been changes in how certain people are compensated within the bank during that period of time.
Sure.
So, like, those things are all significant. Point number 2, which I think is the more important point. If you're just an HR person, like you say, most people, which again, I think most people are capable of a lot of things, a lot more things that they give themselves credit for. If you're just an HR person, okay, congratulations. You can't make more than like 80 grand. So learn new skills.
Yeah.
Become dynamic, become adaptable, become movable, because if you have the capacity of moving around in industries and wearing a couple hats within a company, and taking over systems and weaving into fabrics and doing more than just HR or more than just accounting or more than just data analysis, then you are indispensably valuable and you can make more money. So I believe all of those people are capable of that, but we're just so ingrained this idea of, oh, I'm HR, I'm the fundraiser, I'm the director of operations, and if you're just that, well, you've capped yourself. Because those people can only make so much money.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is really something that I really love about this theory of yours, or the concepts that you are opening here. It really makes me giddy with excitement, to be honest, because it's like you are building the connective tissue between being an employee and full-scale entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah,
It's like it's not a binary anymore. With your
yeah.
ideas, this thing has stopped being a binary. You can be basically, it's like an employee who has really great creative ideas. That's the first level.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
next
yeah.
level, the next level is someone who is so good as an employee that their employer has to allow them to occasionally moonlight in their domain of expertise for other companies because they don't want to lose them. That's the stage
Mm,
2. Stage 3 is somebody who is already like just a consultant, but making so much for 3 different employers, but they still sort of employed, right? Or work for 2 companies and so on. So there's like stages to it. It's not a binary anymore. It becomes a sliding scale between normal employment and full-scale entrepreneurship. And it's opened so many doors to so many
yeah.
people who otherwise wouldn't take the plunge. So that's why anybody listening to this, if you are employed yet, read Evan's book and think about what you can add into your career so that you become slightly more entrepreneurial, because it's going to open more avenues to you. Use these examples at the end of the book where Evan talks about how you can figure out what are those tasks that could add value and suddenly propel you into this next level. It's an absolutely fascinating concept. I so love this. I wish I had had this many years ago when I was still employed, but it's a great interim step.
Well, but it obviously, it applies perfectly to full-on consulting, obviously.
Yeah.
But I did very much try to intend it from the perspective of like, okay, well, again, most people are not working in the way that I work. But I think that the way that I have worked is useful advice for, anybody. I like how you said it. You said it better than I have. The connective tissue between, those middle grounds between full entrepreneurship and full employment, that there's this hybrid. And it makes sense, I think, for the modern era of work, and I think it adds more value. And personally, I, because there is just so much change in the economy, and then and so much cross-pollination between so many industries and so many of the tools that matter, especially with technology and marketing and stuff like that, that you gaining experience in divergent industries or sectors or jobs does add value to whatever your main thing is. And that's when I kind of, going back to where I was earlier about having perspective, having strategic perspective and wisdom and that level of insight. And you only get that by having been across a lot of things and being able to see kind of around the whole circle. Because most people, when I do see people stand up, well, I have an opinion, that they're basically saying, I work in sales. Okay, well, you don't understand 90% of the company then, or, well, this is the HR policy. It's like, okay, well, you're missing everything else, right? And obviously they're bringing together, when you say that thing of like, hey, I am this person in this little slice of the company, it's valuable, it's true, but you're simultaneously saying, I don't have perspective on the business. You should not pay me more. You should not promote me. I cannot add value anywhere else in your company. That's also what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so gaining these different experiences and seeing things from different sides, understanding like, wait a minute, like all these systems have to work cohesively together within a company to create value. And that's the only point. When you generate that perspective, it's just, well, I think it's one of the reasons why I can bring so much authority in any conversation that I'm having, because I truly have the perspective and I'm truly speaking on behalf of the business, because I don't have a specific, I'm not in the slice. I'm around the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, you're
interacting with everything.
You're interweaved, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it also strikes me as you are, because you have this perspective across the entire business, which is a prerogative of the CEO most normally, right? That's kind of that's the CEO perspective. That's why also you become a part-time CEO, so to speak, even if you're only in an advisory position. So you don't have real authority. You have it borrowed by having a good relationships with the CEO or the owner, whoever it is. But with that, you also, because you have this perspective on the entire business, massively increase your pay grade. You become at CEO level pay grade, so to speak. Is that, would you say, is that right?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, awesome. So a couple more concepts from the book that I found so really intriguing. One was the Nietzsche quote, and that one is particularly for me in my world, and I'm going to say why. Is the quote is, "No one can build thee a bridge over which thou must cross the river of life, save thyself alone. There are paths and bridges and demigods without number that will gladly carry thee over, but only at the price of thine own self. Thyself wouldst thou have to give in pawn and then lose it. There is in the world one road whereon none may go except thou." And I found that so intriguing because I inhabit this world where of like coaching, right? Where I teach you how to get clients. And I've realized this because I myself have had coaches who taught me this. I learned it from someone as well, that ultimately, in order to really succeed, you have to build your own bridge. You cannot use other people's recipes, as good and legit as they are, as something that will, as the entire bridge. You can build them as stepping stones or logs in the bridge, but you cannot use them as the bridge itself. You have to do the uncomfortable work of figuring it out on your own and falling flat on your face and learning from it. Which, where I'm going with this is, could you talk about this topic of that you say it's a good thing that this new work model exists in this way? Why is it a good thing for you, and what does it help people do?
Well, yeah, you've asked a lot of questions there, really. Well, certainly it's a good thing for me, right? You know, like, and I'm not trying to say that cynically. I love it. It's you know, this is, it could also be related. What's his name? Jocko Willink, extreme responsibility or extreme ownership concept. I see a lot of people talk about that. I've never really heard him speak, but I've heard people talk about the concept, and it's a good concept. When you're able to take that, and like when you're in that world, it's like, yeah, like you really feel like powerful. It's quite exciting and invigorating. So it's good for me. Is it good for everyone? I don't know. But I think on the balance, that people being asked, or at least knowing that the truest thing about life is that they will bear their own burden, are likely facing the most relevant truth of their life.
Wow,
and
that's great.
And that even if that is painful, and that if some alternative of less bearing of your own burden were achievable, it would be at the sacrifice of yourself, as Nietzsche said. It would be at the loss of yourself. It would be experiencing a different pain, perhaps maybe one that is felt differently or felt in a smaller way, but is uglier and more wicked in so many ways. It will have almost been like a life not lived. Like, here lies insert name, they existed, type of a thing. And there's something almost necessary, I think, about being able to, you know, encounter our own burdens, have our own responsibility to the maximum degree that we're capable, and to suffer our own errors, and to be able to learn from them and grow from them. And I think that's what's, when I think the people in life that I'm interested in are people that do that. You know, and so that's to say that, you know, well, they're not saints, right? They make mistakes, they do things wrong, they're mean from time to time, you know, they're human, all too human. And but yet they strive somehow, you know, and they're committed to themselves, and that they trust in themselves, and there's something beautiful about that, right? And when I look at the professional landscape, I see an inversion of that kind of ancient wisdom, because there is so much, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about you know, that kind of structure you were initially raised in and came from, where, very rigid, very specific, like you have to get this very specific knowledge before you're even allowed to act, and obviously there is a precondition of knowledge before doing, right, to paraphrase Kierkegaard. But at the same time, there's when I look at the professional training program, it's like you have to, there's so many people sell this too. Your industry sells this too, which is why I don't like a lot of coaches. Okay, this is one of the reasons. You have to take this training if you want to be an XYZ. You have to go through this process. This is, this is essential learning for whatever type of thing, and we end up conveying to so many people that you can't possibly be successful, or you can't possibly have a professional career without going through XYZ orthodoxy. And I think that is really fucking bad advice spiritually, but more than anything, I think it's bad advice financially. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, I think the thing that makes you the most money is when you have unique, specific, and rare knowledge. And that can't be achieved by following anybody else's plan. Now, obviously, you need to learn, right? Like, I don't want to come across as anti-learning. I obsessively read, copy people, steal from them, like so many, again, right? Like I said, how did our relationship start? I stole fucking ideas from you, like, and I just took it, right? Like, but so you have to steal, but what instead of most conversations, right? I get in the conversation with somebody, I'm going to this program, I'm going to learn Python and get a job. Okay, well, 1 million people are doing that right now. What differentiates you? Okay, so you'll be employed as long as you're useful with that one skill, and then you'll do that again. And you'll be paid the maximum amount, like if you're the best, you'll be at the top of that, but you won't be, so you'll be in the middle of that, right? So your income is being determined by 1 million other people. Wow, I hope you feel empowered. Like, that's not empowering for my income to be determined by market forces that I have no say in. Like, that's just like dehumanizing in a way. I'd rather deal with making less money on my own merit than the amount of money that you and all of your friends say I can make. Like, that's just not exciting, right? We don't wake up in the morning for that. Oh, I'm waking up to go to a job, to work for somebody that I don't really care about, to get paid an income that was determined by the board of directors at every major corporation around the world.
Yeah,
that's not exciting, right? That's someone building a bridge for you, right? And so, but that long-term massive value strategy is about developing that unique and rare combination of knowledge and skills, which you get by cobbling together these things that you don't really even have a full picture of how they end up working together, but they end up working together because you kind of create that. There's another Nietzsche quote: "A man never has risen higher than when he knows where he isn't going." Yes, like, don't have a perfect plan. Like, I do not have, and this is why I've totally surrendered what I do, and why I can barely talk about what I do in clear and succinct terms, because I don't quite know. Yeah, like, I can't fully tell you what I'm going to do at work today. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have some idea, but.
And that is also when we started the conversation. I think the first main topic that we discussed was you telling me, dude, I just don't know what's happening. Remember? Right?
Yeah,
it was where you just realized, like, because I think we started talking when you went from, I mean, again, no specific figures, but where you suddenly just had this big raise, and where you went from a well-paid consultant to being pretty much like in the top 0.1% of consultants into the stratosphere. So because you just hit the cusp of that hockey stick that you're now really starting on.
That was when things started to get really confusing for me. But again, I think it's the culmination of events, right?
Yeah.
Like, the pay raise I got was a pay raise I did not ask for. That's already just like, what the hell?
Yeah, just,
how many people have said that sentence?
People
I got
are throwing,
a pay raise
people
that
are throwing
I did
money
not
at you.
request.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and the raise amount was between double and triple median family income
Yeah.
in the United States. So
Unasked for.
Unasked for, yeah. So that was obviously a pretty unique moment, but I don't know. Again, I said a lot of things there. I know it's somewhat complicated, and it is kind of complicated, but life is complicated, right? And we try to simplify it down, like, oh, if only I get the right training program from the right school, and then get hired by the right people, and then everything will be fine. No, not right, not right. It's an unsafe bet, and you'll be unhappy.
That's the key thing. I don't really necessarily agree that it's an unsafe bet. I think if you learn Python and you are a developer, and yes, you don't completely close yourself off to new developments, new tech, and so on, you're going to be fine. It's like you're going to be fine. That's not a problem. I just really agree with this point of, as Nietzsche says.
No. Fine. Okay, I agree with that. If you want to be fine, don't read my book.
But if you want to be extraordinary, read the book.
Yeah, there's a lot of plans out there that will get you fine. There's a ton of them out there. I could just pull up any one, right? Google search how to be good at X, and the first bit of results on Google, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, all of that's a fine plan. Definitely fine. You'll make enough money. You'll be okay.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. But as Nietzsche says, only at the price of thine own self.
Only at the price of thine own self.
That's it. That's the key thing. And ultimately, I do believe that if you sacrifice that, and it doesn't look like sacrifice, I very much believe that many people who are seemingly perfectly happy in their job and are thriving in it even, but especially now with where the corporate world is being overrun by certain elements that don't need to be named specifically, but we both know what we're talking about, that in this world the potential for long-term unhappiness, because you have to pretend to believe things that you really deep down don't believe in, the potential for unhappiness in a corporate, even small company position where you have to pay lip service to some dogmas that have not been with us 10 years ago and now are everywhere. That stuff now is I think it has a lot of potential for making people unhappy, but that can be perfectly only my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but that's certainly not my, the thrust of what I'm trying to say. So there's a political element, but I guess, like, I would say to where you were right at the beginning, I would say, like, the biggest sacrifices that I see, that they're made in the suburbs. They're made in the cul-de-sacs. They're made in those lives that people eventually look back on, and it's like, I didn't really get out of life what I wanted, but I did these things, and I did my duty, or something like that. And it's just like, well, I mean, yes, we have obligations and we have duty, and duty is actually, I think, very sacred in many ways, and shouldn't be unsanctimoniously cast aside. But if that's what you hang your hat on, it's like, well, wait a minute now, like, there's more effort that we can give more intelligently towards the conduct of our lives to live a better life. And I think so much of that is in the professional world, because that is such a big part of our life. And we're trained and educated in a professional way that's in PowerPoints, it's in boxes, it's in clear plans, it's in learn, execute. It's in, deference to the people who started a day before you. And I don't think that's the way that you're going to maximize your earning potential. And simultaneously, that's not the way you're going to maximize your life satisfaction. And I think those ideas are even partially linked. Like, if you're like, no, I'm trying to live a good life, not trying to make very much money. Dissonance, like that, maximizing your potential in one domain is not served by limiting your potential in another domain. That just doesn't make sense, because I think we're one person. I don't think we're a person here and a person there and a person there.
But
Like,
wait,
I think we bring our spirit everywhere.
you presuppose that most people, or like generally people's desire is to maximize their potential. I don't think it is. I think most people.
Well,
No.
no. Wait a minute. No, maximize their potential. No, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense to me. No. Not trying to. I assume most people are trying to live as good of a life as possible, right?
But the range of possible is very subjective.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, it's subjective. Yes, precisely. Yeah, it's absolutely subjective. There's your bridge. Build it. Cross it yourself.
No way.
For what a good life is.
Exactly. But no way, they won't do that. Most people won't do that.
And but most people want to do that, and I think when we go into the professional world and we limit that, we simultaneously train our lives, the rest of our lives, to also limit it too.
Bingo. That's it. It will also, if you accept these kind of really considerable limitations in your professional life, it will it will create a certain learned helplessness, this kind of the puppy who cannot jump over the low fence because they got the electrocution. I don't know what the analogy is there, but you get my point. You will learn this helplessness in other areas of your life too.
Yeah, because again, you are trained quite well professionally, right? And you do that. You practice your limiting behavior 8 hours a day. Of course, that brings itself home.
Yes.
Of course, it brings itself into other things. So I want to approach work and life. Well, we approach all aspects of our life like we approach all aspects of our life. Like, I believe there's that consistency. So I want to, if I'm trying to live as good of a life as I can, it means I'm trying to have as good of a professional career as I can as well. And it's got to be on your own terms.
Absolutely.
Because you're the only person that is held accountable for your life at the end of the day.
Yeah. And because I have been conditioned in this very way, how you describe it, in this kind of negative way, the kind of the boxy thinking, that's why I think it's such a blessing that I found my wife, who is exactly on the kind of opposite side of the spectrum. She's the everything is possible, where the sky's the limit. And it reminds me of what you said on your podcast with Terence, which I just listened to, the recent podcast that came out, where you said that you're also very different in many areas with your wife, that you complement each other, right? And so that
incredibly so. Yeah.
Exactly. And that brings me to the final topic of the book that I wanted to discuss before digging into Machiavelli, the topic of who, not what.
Yep.
Could you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, who is the most important thing in your work and your life? And it's, again, I've already said so many things about why I don't think we should be investing all of our time, energy, and money into the what of our career. Get this degree to go work here and do with the what, right? But when we look at how people kind of conceptualize the dream job, it's the do what you love, right? That's what they say. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That's the most important thing you can control for. And I think that that's wrong because, again, I believe, as I've generally proven, the what is going to transform regardless of your input, regardless of whether you're looking at it or not, right? Which is, oh man, that's a great. I'm alluding to a really good set of kind of Irish and Scottish 17th and 18th century empiricist philosophy there with the God of the quad analogy. Does the trees exist if we aren't looking at it? Like, yes, it exists because God is watching everything. That's from Berkeley. But anyway, the what of your career, any career, will change regardless of your contributions to it. So that's going to change. So get over that. And it's important that you do many whats in your life. So the specific whats, well, it's not that important, so instead of focusing on the what of your career, focus on the who. So find good people to work with and let the rest solve itself. Now part, of course, of who is someone good to work with is someone who is different from you, who has different skills, different experiences, different personality, different strengths and weaknesses in many ways. So that's important, and that is somewhat what related. as well. But for the most part, I think if you work with good, talented, intelligent people with high integrity, who you enjoy being around, I think you can do anything. I think you can take over the world, your own little world, right? And that's all you need for a good life. Are you kidding me?
Hmm.
Like, it's so easy to live a good life right now. My God, all you got to do is make a few $1 million and you're set.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. That sounds like a lot of money. I don't think that's a lot of money. Like, if you really figure something out and have a good value proposition with a few score good fellows, like, you're gonna do well.
Hmm.
And you're probably going to do better because, again, when I think about so many, and this is substantiated scientifically through a lot of the neuroscientific research into this, but you are more creative, you're more conscientious, you're more industrious, you're more innovative, you're able to work harder and for longer hours with less energy and effort when you're around and surrounded by people you trust and enjoy being around. And that is not the description of most businesses. You're in a meeting with people you don't like and who don't like you. Okay, well, fuck. Like, how much value are you going to get out of a group of people where that's true? You know, or even if you somehow did create a team of people that like each other, well, they don't like the other team that they have to coordinate with.
Yeah.
You know, so that is the common thread of any company. And you know, obviously everybody's trying to create a good team culture, right? And that's an important thing. It's something that I advise business owners on: the importance of culture, the importance of fit, the importance of finding the right people, even if they aren't necessarily the most qualified. You know, you can train somebody who's a good person easier than you can adjust your team's personality around somebody who's qualified but just doesn't fit, right? So, you know, that's something that I'll always care about. But I identify business owners that I like and who have deficiencies that are my strengths, right? And who are good at things that I'm bad at. And I identify people to work with who do things differently than me, that have different skill sets, but that share, you know, my values, especially with respect to integrity, because that's the biggest thing. Like trust is just the most essential currency within any professional partnership.
And trust goes hand in hand with liking the person.
Precisely. Yeah. You don't, if you don't like somebody, you don't trust them, you know,
Exactly.
like it just, well, and again, that's almost like another thing as well, right? Like, oh, they're a friend, I like them. Like, well, okay, do you trust them? You know, like, really, if you do trust somebody, you are friends with them, because that's just deeply within our brain, right? Like, we're a competitive, scared, high functioning primate. You know, that's only a few thousand years out of the jungle. Like, you know, okay, most of our history is we're worried about, you know, the thing jumping out of the dark. You know, so the idea, like, hey, wait a minute, I'm standing next to somebody who's got my back. Whoa, what a gift. Like, we can perform at a high level with that, but without that, man, half of our mind is back in the jungle. Deservedly so.
Yeah.
Totally justifiably. And that's where, well, again, okay, so, I got a great degree. You know, I can go be, you know, finance director at a company, right? Getting paid 125 grand, something like that, right? Max salary, by the way. And, you know, I'm with people, like, is that going to be the incubator for my brain and my spirit and my professional energy for the next 5 years? Who am I 5 years later? Probably not very different. But, like, if I'm now in an environment of people that praise my work and love my work, and I praise their work and love their work, and we can just get in this virtuous cycle of development, like, we're all different people 5 years from now with transformatively different and better skills, you know, able to adapt to a changing market, for example. And so, yeah, that's why I think who is so much more important. I think it unlocks your potential in a way that people have so de-emphasized. I think we've given up. Oh, you can't choose who you work with. Like, well, you're right. You can't choose things that you give up on. You're right. That you don't try. If you don't try something, you can't get it. I got it. That's right.
Exactly.
So I built my career around that.
And one very interesting, sorry to use the word, paradigm shift has been for me when recently you contacted me and somebody else, you know, the three of us having complementary skills. And we just said, let's do something together. We don't yet know what it's going to be, but because there is a fit, because we like and trust each other, that's why something can be built out of that. And for me, that was like, I instantly jump into this, okay, what will we be doing? And you very well in the email that you responded to said, you know what, let's just put that aside. We don't have to figure this out yet. Let's just focus on our complementary skills that we have. Obviously, it's going to be in some kind of an area that we've already worked in. We're not going to be doing something hyper mega technical and so on. That's just not our thing. But let's still explore and focus on the who first rather than the what. And that the principle sounds great. And instantly, oh yeah, this guy, I should really focus on who to work with. But then when it comes to it, while I had understood it from your book, I needed this specific example of you bringing the three of us together for it to really click. And that's why I think this is like a common thread through the book. I think those concepts are so valuable and so interesting, but the application of it is, I think, daunting. I think for most people, and even for me, I am an entrepreneur, I run my own show, but still many of these things, whenever it's like untrodden territory, I easily take one step back. Right? It's just, it does take me a while to enter into this new territory that you are outlining. So that's why I think having people around who can reinforce this, like you did in the email, is so valuable.
Well, okay, with the word untrodden territory, we're now like so decidedly in the philosophical realm that that like I have to make mention of two huge influences on me. One of them is Nassim Taleb. Who he talks about speculation. Hey, you should be doing, a majority of the things that you're doing should be known entities. You know that they work, they do work, they pay you money, there's, they're safe, right? And then a good percentage, a smaller percentage, but a reasonable percentage of things should be totally fucking speculative. Wild cards. Hey, we don't know what this is. Like go into the forest where it's darkest to you and see what happens. Like, and you have to keep a process of doing that. And obviously most of it doesn't work. I've started a few different companies that haven't worked. I've tried a few different things as a consultant that haven't worked. But the game isn't, I hope I bet right every time. It's that I make a lot of bets and I don't overextend myself in any of them. And then when I see a bet paying off, again, it'll be a small number of bets pay off relative to the total bets. I then invest into that. And then that becomes the safe system, right? And then you just continuously do that, and that's how you extend upward, right? So that's kind of Taleb's view from a mathematical statistical point. But Jordan Peterson says a very similar thing. Like we should be, and this is substantiated in all of the religious frameworks of every great religion, mythology. Like we should be simultaneously oriented in both order and chaos, and that the person who leads, the person who knows things, the person who is transformative and restorative and developmental and admirable, is the person that's able to balance those two forces because they're both necessary. We have to protect the village with the walls, and we have to venture out into the forest to get the gold and bring it back, because the village has to be protected from scary things, and simultaneously it doesn't have enough value in it, or it could have more, it wants more, and that's elsewhere, that's outside where we don't know things. So we always have to be working in that kind of type of, again, I don't like the word balance, but it's like a symbiotic relationship between these the seemingly competing forces, that you could be called stupid for. Like, why would you go into the forest where it's darkest? Why would you speculate on a business plan without a business plan? But I don't know. I think that's also a humble way to go about it too, because it's being honest about what you don't know. Okay, well, I don't know it's over there, but like there very well could be gold over there, and I don't have enough. I don't have as much as I could. Life isn't as good as it could be, or possibly life could be better. I'm reminded of the a quote between my wife and I. It's from Kurt Vonnegut's short story about I forget the short story, but it's the author Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes,
presumably, yeah, and about the totalitarian society that constrains people's brains who are too smart, and a genius escapes prison, and they end up anyway. That there's this moment where, in the text, it's brilliant, where that this person breaks into a TV live TV show, and begins dancing with this woman. And this was, of course, dangerous because she was beautiful, and you weren't allowed to show her beauty. And he was masculine and forthright and skilled, and you're not allowed to do those things. And there's this scene where they're dancing and they're jumping as if they were trying to kiss the ceiling, and that's a really beautiful poetic phrase, to try to kiss the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so and my constant question is, well, how high is the ceiling? We don't know. The other, actually, I think the better version of this, or the more musical, of course, is from the movie Moana. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God, you have to watch Moana.
No.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Oh, Moana.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've heard of it, but no, I haven't seen it. Is it Pixar? It's a cartoon, right?
Yeah, it's a cartoon.
Yeah,
cartoon. Brilliant movie. Oh my God, so sophisticated. So sophisticated. But the one song at the beginning, again, where the hero Moana, she's the hero, right? The great hero, and that has to adventure forth, right? To go out and adventure, because the island's gonna die, right? If they don't, and she has to go out and solve the problem, but the one song at the beginning, so see the light where the sky meets the sea, it's calling, and no one knows how far it goes. Or oh no, so see the line where the sky meets the sea, it's calling, and no one knows how far it goes. The line where the sky meets the sea. Okay, Taoism. Like, there we go. What's that? That's between chaos and order. The sky is order, the sea is chaos. And no one knows how far it's going. Like, brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely,
and
brilliant poetry.
This is how this book that seemingly talks just about design your career, and it appears on the surface to be just one of many kind of self-help development type books. That's how it really continues in this tradition of great philosophic writers and thinking. It's your version. It's like a professional version of Taoism. And that is something I truly admire, that you have tapped into something. And I think this is it's a sign of great literature, even if it comes to you in the form of a simple advice book, that says build your own job. So again, I wanted to commend you on the brilliance of the book that I devoured in a couple of sittings, and everybody should buy. I hope that's some good advertising here. Comes and is genuine. So finally, on the last topic that I definitely have to touch on, which is also continuing in the tradition of great philosophers, or at least in this case, controversial philosophers. You have in your LinkedIn profile the moniker, the Machiavelli of business. Tell us how you are influenced by Machiavelli, and why do you think he's applicable to business these days?
So let me just actually grab this really quick, because this is interesting. My wife got me this many years ago. It's one of the first English translations of the history of Florence, and then combined with The Prince, by Machiavelli, of course.
Beautiful. So
I don't know if you can see the name.
Yeah.
Where did I? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite nice.
Is it dusty when you open it?
Yeah, I mean it's old.
Proper. It's good old stuff. Good stuff.
But yeah, so I love Machiavelli. His works have greatly affected me. I forget when I first read him, probably when I was a teenager. But and I've read his stuff many times. What I constantly love in his work is that it's just so true and so accurate, and that's part of what realism is in philosophy and political theory as well. And again, he's principally a political philosopher, but I find its application everywhere. And I've kind of transformed in that, seeing realism the tenet of realism, the philosophy of realism, broadly speaking, is kind of foundational wisdom. It's not the complete picture. It's not the whole truth, right? It's not the explanation for every possible externality. It doesn't include every possible party in the conversation, but it's basically 80% of everything going on, something like that. And which is to say, if you don't understand realism and you don't respect it, you're missing 80% of the picture, because that's what's happening there. And that's to say that Machiavelli wrote a philosophy, and it could almost be said that he was one of the first philosophers ever to truly write something about the is of life without any respect to the ought.
Mhm.
And it wasn't that he thought the ought was irrelevant or useless or not important. You know, he was a good Christian man. He was tortured for a year due to his support for the Republic and for political representation in opposition to the monarchy. Again, most people who are tyrannical trying to support absolute governments weren't tortured for a year. So that is a significant piece of his history when people cast aspersions upon him. But he wrote about the is, and he wrote about how leaders led countries, how all great leaders succeeded, even if they weren't very nice, and how there are many instances throughout history. Well, effectively, we can say in one word, he said, every other political philosopher talked about how leaders should operate, but none of them actually ever existed. He talked about how leaders of countries operated, who actually existed, and what they actually did, the good and the bad. And that even in many cases, there are examples of people who intended to be good, but who ended up bringing upon their people suffering because they were ineffective, because their intentions were out there and they were saintly and wonderful or whatever, but they were completely ineffectual. Mm-hmm. And that there were people who intended bad or who had meanness in their hearts, but ended up being quite effective, mm-hmm. or were brutal in some instances, but to 10 people. And because of that, thousands of people were more prosperous. And that this is something that happens within states and throughout all of history. And so if we simply, if we are only judging people by our own modern, arrogant view of morality, essentially, that we are losing such a massive part of history, but also a massive part of even our own lives and how we operate, the part of us that we don't think is true. And if anything, I see Machiavelli's guidebook as if you are actually a good person and you want to actually create good in the world, you need to know this playbook. Because people who don't want to create good in the world are willing to break all the rules. And if you aren't able to sometimes suspend your moral judgments in order to create good effects, you will likely lose in the grand scheme of things. Mm. And people who are willing to suspend moral judgments for bad reasons will overcome you in many instances. And so this is essentially why political leaders have to also have the ability to lie, why they have to have the ability to appear faithful, but sometimes not keep the faith, why they have to have the ability to execute wrongdoers to save the innocent, and why they have to have, and why if they don't study war, for example, and its consequences, people will die, and mainly the innocent.
Now, to
how does that relate to business?
Okay, before we get into business, but because you now brought up political leaders, that is essentially, I mean, Vladimir Putin would heavily nod his head in favor, probably Lukashenko as well in Belarus, that a leader sometimes has to implement harsh measures for the good of the people. So I don't know how you stand towards these two particular leaders, but they, at least in my world and my moral framework, although I just heard that applying moral frameworks can sometimes be arrogant, which I get, but I wonder, what is your response to that? Putin and Lukashenko probably would happily agree with all that, what you just said.
Well, that's a very heavy example. I would also say that most people sitting in the U.S. government would agree with that too. Most people
Well, there's
sitting in
probably
sitting
more
in the European
idealists.
government would say that too. I would say that Angela Merkel would absolutely agree with what I just said, for example. I would say
Mm.
Macron would absolutely agree with what I just said.
Yeah.
So, and of course Biden would.
Okay. But I mean, I'm
And
referring to things
Obama,
like,
oh my God, Obama is a hardcore realist. So like if we do want to talk about, who would agree with those principles. So, but now, okay, let's look at the effects. Okay, well, what is the effect? I don't know anything about Belarus,
okay.
so I can't speak fluently to that. And obviously there's limited knowledge that I have here in general. Putin, many aspects of him are quite brutal, definitely. He's a killer, like objectively. He's been in that arena, and his leadership of the country is definitely self-serving in many ways. But what has that done for the Russian people? How do the Russian people feel about it? They seem to be pretty happy.
Okay, I mean, we cannot really go into this in very much detail because also at some point my knowledge of the situation there is suboptimal. But one thing that I know about Russia is that there's not a lot of economic innovation happening. That
Yeah, okay.
they basically rely on natural resources.
If you're comparing to utopia, okay. So yeah, if you're comparing to, well, we're not meeting certain ideals. Like again, let's talk about reality. This is not my endorsement of any type of political leader.
Yeah.
It's simply just to say, well, on the balance, based upon a good degree of based upon some of the information that I do have, that I consider to be as nonpartisan as it can hope to be,
Mm-hmm.
that I see, well, a better example would be Xi Jinping.
Oh yeah.
Okay? I know a lot more about Xi Jinping than I do about things happening in Russia.
Okay.
And Xi Jinping he's hardcore, and he has taken a tremendous amount of authority in China. And okay, well, what are some of the results? Some of the fastest rise in people from out of extreme poverty ever. What, we just turn our noses up at that? Like that, is that nothing? Right? Like to me, that is a significant monumental accomplishment. And I can, on the one hand, say, no, I don't like censorship. No, I don't like the fact that in Russia, speaking out against the president carries a extreme sentence. Right? I can say that I have moral issues with those things, while simultaneously saying that certain aspects of state management and what the effects have been on the people, broadly speaking, have to be regarded as a net positive.
Okay.
For many people, or at least I have to consider the people who were in extreme poverty and who are no longer in extreme poverty, the people who were starving and who are no longer starving. I can look at that and say that, Muslim concentration camps in Western China are completely distasteful. So I'm not trying to be absolutist in how I calculate, the political actions of governments. I think people do that far too easily.
Yeah. But let's get back. I'm really intrigued about Machiavelli and especially his application to business. So you said it's all about realism. It's about the is, not the ought, and that Machiavelli was one of the first, if not the first, philosopher to consider that, albeit in the realm of political philosophy. So how does that now translate into business? Is it as simple as simply saying a good business leader simply looks at the is, not the ought?
Yeah, that's kind of like that, but it's more like I sometimes emphasize the brutality of it. Like I think that's such a relevant feature because, again, that's one of the striking points where what Machiavelli will bring forward is just like, okay, well, this guy, conducted, some political assassinations, and then the next 50 years, the people lived in prosperity and harmony, whereas the preceding 50 years, they lived in chaos and destitution. All right, so what do we say about that? Good or bad? Well, let's be careful, right? So when I look at the business owners, it's just like, okay, well, you have a staff member that is harming morale within the company every single day. Fire them brutally and make an example of them. Your job isn't to be nice. Maybe that's one of the biggest things. Leadership is not about being nice. Sovereignty is not about being nice. And business owners are sovereigns, like political leaders. The same rules apply. No, it's not life and death. That part of the terms are gone. But it's livelihood, though, and that's a pretty significant term. Business owners are now responsible for the livelihoods of countries. Small business owners. Okay, small business owners make up over 50% of the employment in virtually every country. So ordinary people, you're an employer, you're one of them, right? So people like you are sovereigns, effectively, over micro fiefdoms, where you are controlling the livelihood of human beings and the provision of the goods and services for the world. Those are really significant terms where we don't have time to worry about every degree of nicety and diplomacy, because those provisions are so significant and so paramount for the world continuing. And so again, Machiavelli is talking about the survivability of the state, because when the state goes into chaos, innocent people die. Look at Afghanistan, for example. But but those are the terms of a small business owner. They're very, very serious terms. And so they have to be dealt in a very realist framework. And when I look at the literature that Machiavelli was dealing with about political leadership, he was reading all of these oughts about these leaders that never existed, and this harmonious state called Plato's Republic. And he's like, okay, good for you. That's never existed. Let's talk about what actually exists. Ugliness included. Ugliness, inefficiency, and contradiction included, which is a great prelude to Nietzsche. Contradiction is part of untruth and contradiction are part of a condition of life. You know, that and that to recognize that puts you beyond good and evil. You know, and that's why it's like, wait a minute, that there's a higher morality that's beyond our physical moral framework, I think. You know, and that is recognizing that there are certain contradictions and certain untruths that extend beyond what we want to commonly or safely understand. So these contradictions and part of these uglinesses are part and parcel of what makes up life, what makes up a business, and what makes up a country. They must be dealt with one way or the other. Why not deal with them head on and with full power, force, authority, and wisdom behind you? And so I believe that the Machiavellian framework and realism more generally equips you with that set of tools to be able to approach those situations that are ugly, where there's going to be blood loss, effectively. There's going to be tears, where somebody gets hurt, but you can do it in the best way possible. With the minimum amount of loss, with the minimum amount of pain, with the minimum amount of suffering, because it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. There is no business without suffering and firing and crying and arguments and corruption and lying and people violating contracts. You know, what business is in the world is that shit not going on? So let's be real. Let's look at it honestly. Let's not be immovable from our conception of morality and principle, and understand that the highest principle is the success of the business, because the success of the business is the thing that manifests the possibility for everyone that works for you to make money and provide for their families. Is the thing that makes it possible for your customers to get the maximum value in the product or service that you're offering. So
the analogy to Machiavelli is, of course, that in his case, the highest principle is the success of the state or of the principality, right? It's not about or is it about the survival of the prince?
That's where there's a nice blend for me, because again, I work with business owners. Like, well, what's the difference between the business owner and the business? There is a difference, but
okay. Well, it doesn't have to be covered, but the highest principle is the success of the business owner / the business. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it strikes me as, and I come from an idealistic background, right? So that's again, part of my philosophical tradition comes from that, you know, waving the flag of the odd, moral purity, and so on.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying, but I'm always thinking, if that is the highest principle in the success of the business, it would be justifiable to do some things and cut moral corners, right?
Correct.
Not always. You cannot cheat your suppliers because at some point they will cut you off and you will ultimately damage the business. So you cannot do immoral things in at a large scale, but you can regularly cut moral corners if it serves your purpose. Like cheat one supplier who you will not work with later on, for example. That would be something comes to mind.
I don't think so, though. So, well, again, there's some dependencies here. In general, I agree with the general idea of that it justifies immoral certain brutal acts. I wouldn't say immoral, but and that's what I'm so away from in a way. Like I'm willing to somewhat use your language because it's so common. But for example, for me to not adhere maximally to the highest moral principle is not the same thing as saying I'm conducting an immoral activity.
Ah, interesting.
So that is a variation. And to cheat a supplier, okay, well, if you cheat a supplier once, you're very likely to now have that reputation. And obviously, there are examples of people who cheat suppliers, and we know about them, okay, who still have gotten wealthy. Some of them have been presidents of the United States. But the bigger truth is the thing that we're missing. Most people who cheat suppliers lose.
Yeah.
So we know about all of, and again, this is why some of the view is so disjointed. Oh, look at all these bad people. No, most everyone that's up here is unbelievably moral.
Yeah.
Has extremely high integrity, doesn't lie, doesn't cheat, doesn't steal, does good by everybody, but they're a little bit brutal from time to time. They know how to be brutal to people doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So there's very, very few people who make it to the top who got there through corruption and sliminess and ugliness, and that doesn't sustain itself. There are people who get up there, very few of them do, and they do not sustain it because people get rid of them.
Or their transgressions are way considerably less than their overall contribution. Example, Bill Gates.
That's a great example too. Yeah, that's
definitely transgressions, but are not world or earth shattering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, but that's part of the realism, right? There's these imperfections. There's the untruth is part of life's condition. Ugliness is there. Contradiction is there. There are heroes in the world that do great things, yet they are still men and women that are human. And we have this stupid myth that oh no, our heroes have fallen because they engaged in transgressions. That to me is insane. Like to me, it should make you feel small. Wow, they're a human just like you, and look what they've done.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So did we just effectively land on the main thesis of your upcoming book?
It is. Well, it's the thesis of my life, and it's the thesis of my advisory to business owners. It's how I consult with them all the time about everything. I deal with the ugliness head on, and because I believe it is absolutely essential to have somebody that's able to manage that. Well, and really another thing too, right, is a lot of business owners, right? They're usually pretty creative people, right? They're pretty innovative. They have a lot of energy, and most people are creative, are fairly agreeable. So they're nice, sometimes too nice, sometimes too emotional, sometimes too heartfelt in a lot of things that they do. And I can come in there and be not very heartfelt, right? Yeah. And look at something with cold, clear calculation. Again, not moving into the heartless, but just stepping back from, wait a minute, let's put the mind first. Let's put the data first. Let's look at the facts of the case. And so, it's a big part of what I do.
So when is the new book coming out?
Yeah, I have no idea. Not worried about it. I'm working on it. I'll get it done. I'll get it done when I get it done.
Cool. Awesome. Evan, this has been a real privilege. talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. And is there something you'd want to share in terms of like how people should get in touch with you, other than, of course, definitely buying your book, which everybody should do? Any other message how you would want to leave us?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you'd like to work with me, you can call me at +1 404 723 6444. I'm not really looking for clients, but if I work with people I like to work with, so, but I'm always interested in good conversations. So,
as you've shown today. Excellent. Yeah. Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
The State of Client Acquisition is a Content 360 production. Music by Gavin Knox-Grand. To sign up for alerts and to submit written and audio questions, go to stateofclientacquisition.com. I'll talk to you in the next episode.
Montreal girls in the tail end of winter. Caffeine burns, wide awake dreams in color. Blood on my hands in this open heart journey. And infinite numbers, rapid fire across the country. We slide tonight, and the light on the ocean so bright. With my